Hi, you friends. I hope you're all dead. I hope you're all doing well. Oh, hi, friends and friendly people. I hope you're all well. How are you? Slaine. What the goodness is a Slaine? What even is a Slaine? It's a comic book, I guess. Some like Irish Celtic warrior. I don't know. Just muscles, axes, fighting, violence. It's like dragons and shit. Whatever. I've looked at like bits and pieces of Slaine by various artists, but because Slaine spreads so widely in terms of art, I thought it might be nice to have a little look through. I've got a bunch of Slaine books, numbers 2, 4, 5, 6, 7. So missing a couple because I collect them based on art, not on, having the full collection or story or anything gay like that. I mean, anything that I would not be interested in like that. So the early ones, black and white comic book art. So it's actually very, very good comic book art. The sort of British European comic book sensibilities are very, very different from the American. I was going to say Western, the American comic book sort of creation. The artwork tends to be a lot more involved. There's a lot more to it. Generally, not all the time, but generally. And this is actually a very, very good example of that. Just the amount of details and just stuff going on is a lot more. Look at that. That's fucking cool. There's a lot more than you'd normally see in American comics, where it tends to be, broader brush strokes and, more focused on like the dynamic characters as opposed to the world they inhabit. Which is something that Slaine does very well, is create the world that these characters inhabit. It's very good for that. Look, dragon, like I said. I mean, the black and white stuff's cool. Like I say, it is good drawings. I'm not trying to say it sucks or anything, because it's good. Look at that. Kill. We like that. Weird fish man. But then you see the painted stuff, and this stuff almost pales in comparison. Actually, do you know what? I think that's the angle I was going to take, was that, yeah, the black and white stuff's cool, but then you see the painted stuff, and it's just another. The more I look at this, the more I actually really like it. As like, if you just look at it as, like inking work, Glenn Fabry, the favourite, it's really, really good. Yeah, the painted stuff, stands out for what it is. Whoa! That is very different. That's not Glenn Fabry, surely that can't be. It's got to be somebody else. Who is it? David P-U-G-A. I'm assuming that's Pew, but I'm going to read it as Pooh. David Pooh. Probably inspired by Frank Miller, but maybe not. Who can say? So yeah, the black and white stuff is good, obviously. It's good drawings, well-drawn comic book, good stuff. Horses, weird alien horses, they're hard to draw, probably. I like it. I think they're good. Yeah, they're good. Very good. As I say, I'm not talking about Slaine. I'm not here to say Slaine is this guy and he represents this and it's based on. I'm just looking at the artwork. So book 4 is I was going to say infamous, the famous and rightly so Horned God artwork by Simon Bisley. This, I think, what Simon Bisley has done several times with Slaine, with ABC Robots, and a whole host of other stuff, is he's like reignited a love for it and sort of shown people what you can do. Because look at that. That's a painting that exists as a piece of artwork somewhere. One big piece of artwork. Yeah, there's other titles, they do well enough. They're good. They're cool comic books, whatever. But then Simon Bisley comes aboard, does his thing, paints basically himself as Slaine and Lobo and whatever else. And then suddenly every other book in that series afterwards is like a Bisley imitation almost. And we will see some of that. There are, people doing their own things. But even so, they do... Look at that, man. It's just fucking good. I could look at this book for hours. Jesus. You can see the underpainting and the sketches, but at the same time, you're like, how do you even do that? Like, you can see where he's painted the blue around the shape of the hair. So that's the underpainting is the hair that he's just left blank because it's dark. He hasn't painted the hair in, except for these little bits here. Very cool. I don't know what the fuck I was saying. Yeah, there are other artists do have their own takes on it, and they do good stuff on their own. But there's a lot of like Bisley clones out there, and I will try not to just flip through this book, too slowly because, well, let's face it, that'll be the entire video, and that'll be a good video, obviously, because the artwork's very good. But I'll try to get through because there's a bunch of stuff. And yeah, I've looked at it before in other videos, but it definitely bears looking at again because look at it, man. There's a sort of, I don't know if you call it a trend or a theme, or there's something in comic books. There's certain, like Image Comics was very famous for it, especially in like the 90s. For having every page be like a pin-up. Like every page had at least one aspect to it where it looked amazing. You could put it up on a wall and it would look great. So like that, for instance, would be... Or, those 2 pages we saw before, like stuff like that. But, I don't know, like that's quite cool, and it is good to have comics that look, every page is just fantastic and dynamic and outrageous. It's funny. But that only works. That probably only works with like certain superhero comics that are probably written to be like that. Because stuff like this, you do get. I mean, every page is a work of art in itself. But it's almost pointless. Not pointless, but like, if every page is dynamic, if everyone's a superhero, then no one's a superhero. If every page is dynamic, then it's just boring and pointless. Whereas if you have, pages of people talking, doing whatever, milking goats, then when you have dynamic shit happen, it's more dynamic in opposition to the less dynamic pages. Dragons. I mean, this all being hand-painted is just ridiculous. And there's so much of it. Like, it's a pretty thick book as well. I don't know how long it would have taken to do. Or a couple of years, at least, I think. And I like bits like this, like the time-saving bits, where you can see the blobs of paint, where it's just painted around. Again, just the dark underpainting with the sketches in there. Pull out a few details just to show what's what. Same here. And then move on, and then spend all the time rendering this flesh here with this reflected light, getting all these shapes and shit. That's a really good tip, I guess. Get all this shit out of the way, just quick, gestural, figurative, make sure you can tell what's going on, but ultimately whatever, and then you focus on this bit, because that's the important part. And I like the jumps in like tone, quite dull, dark, some of it, brighter colours where they need to be. And then stuff like this, bright blues and oranges in the sky, dragon fights. So good. I don't want to miss a single page, but at the same time, I don't want to just spend the whole video flipping through this. I might have to hurry. Otherwise the video will be an hour long and no one will want to watch it. Not that that's the point, obviously. The point is to just look at some cool artwork. I love this like diver suit. They've got the little goblin fella in. The broad, wet strokes of paint he's used for the water. Really, really cool textures with the paint and stuff. Cool patterns and things. Again, with like fairly quite like graphic art looking stuff there, and then more heavily rendered. It's just good, man. It's really rather good. Look at that. Ah, so good, man. That's painted so well. And you can see the layers, and you can see that probably didn't take him that long to paint that, but it's so effective and so good. Ah, love that. Love it. Very Klimt looking sort of stuff. Ugh, it's all just so bloody good. King of Kings. Oh. Really good colours. I've said before, crowd scenes are really difficult. Oh, it's like the old Slaine. Because if you have too many colours, it's too much. There's too much going on. But you keep it in like a general tone. You'll see they do that in like TV shows and films as well. They have background characters all wearing similar coloured clothing and stuff, so as to not, make things look too silly. It fits within the aesthetic of the scene or whatever. Oh, it's all just so good. Okay, it's Art of Slaine, not Simon Bisley's Art of Slaine. But it's so good. I just like it so much. I even remember a time when I knew Glenn Fabry. He was like my first sort of introduction into this kind of world. And for me, he was like the best who'd ever done it. And I'd heard the name Simon Bisley, and I was like, oh, cool, I guess. I'll look him up. Googled him, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, babes, muscles, guns, yeah, I get it. And then the more I looked at it, the just further and further into it I fell, and I was just like, ugh, man. Which is probably the same for everyone else. I mean, it's not a comics fan alive that doesn't know the name Simon Bisley, which is, as a feather in your cap to have. That's a pretty good one, isn't it? If you're the guy that everybody knows as being like one of the greatest like comic artists ever. Number 5, Glenn Fabry. That's not Glenn Fabry on the cover. That's somebody else. But there's Glenn Fabry in here. I think Simon Bisley said in an interview at one point how Glenn Fabry was always like one step behind Bisley. Like Bisley would start painting stuff, and then Fabry started painting stuff, and then Bisley started doing like covers, and then Fabry started doing covers, and then Bisley did Lobo, then Fabry did some Lobo. Really, really like, this is Glenn Fabry stuff, this grayscale painting. It's a really good way of keeping a certain sort of vibe and feel and tone about a piece. Especially if it's at night time or whatever. The lack of colour really, really works. And this is Greg Staples. He's a very, very good artist. He's on Instagram. He posts quite a lot on there. Very, like, especially Slaine, very, very, I don't know, I don't want to say he's obviously heavily influenced by Bisley, but it's a very strong Bisley look to it. but he absolutely grew and developed and is, you know, his own artist or whatever. But I guess it's the way they paint, so it's going to look similar. You paint your own stuff, but if you paint it in a certain way, it's going to look like other people who paint in that way, isn't it? Some more Fabry. We do like the Fabe. Fabrity Fabry. I like how Simon Bisley gets really like crazy and wacky with his stuff. Not too much, but quite a lot. Whereas Glenn Fabry tends to keep everything fairly grounded. And especially in terms of anatomy and stuff, very realistic. If you just look at his anatomy, it's all fairly realistic. You know, goofy faces, but not like outrageous with huge eyes and going all over the place. It's all fairly contained within a believable sort of feel. But then he does stuff like this where it needs to be wacky. He does that. And even then, like all the flesh and stuff he paints is very sort of believable. I love this lip here and the tongue. Oh, it's nice. Very, very, very nice. That's one of the first Fabry images I ever saw, was in a different book. And, you know, it's kind of like, really, you're just going to have like a basically naked guy with a bulge and everything. But then you look at it in terms of artwork, and it's just so, so impressive. And then you look at it again and go, yeah, have a naked man with a bulge. Fuck, delicious. Love it. Love it. The anatomy, man. You can see the muscles stretching. The feet and the wrinkles and everything. Oh. Dream sort of stuff. I wish I could be that, you know. This is getting into different artists now, I believe. Really like that. That's really nice. The heavy shadows, heavy black shadows is really, really good. Really impressive. Very useful tool. I'm just going to spend forever looking through these. I have to quicken up a little. The different artists, though, there's really, I mean, you go from black and white ink to Bisley's hand-painted stuff to Greg Staples, Glenn Fabry, their hand-painted stuff. It's all very, very good. But it does change. Like, who's this? Is this Dermot Power, I think? Looks more similar to my work, actually, with still being hand-painted, but it's much bolder and more graphic than, you know, being more sort of dense and realistic. It almost looks like a step down from, you know, Bisley and Fabry. Not to take away from him, because it is really, 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 really good. But, you know. Oh, look at that. That's really good. I like that a lot. That and that. That's a good spread. Again, really good use of the heavy shadows. And there. Little imps. We like goblins and imps. Dragons, worms, crucifixions, fight scenes. Stuff like this, like, it's, you know, hard enough to draw as it is, but composing that, like figuring out, okay, I'm going to draw this figure here, this one here, this one here, and it's like trying to fit everything in such a way that looks believable, and it's not too jumbled together, but it's not too spread out. Like, putting that image together, building that image, it's a really difficult thing to do. Even something like that, same sort of thing. That's impressive, man. It's impressivo.